Hello, it's Joe Lyons, and next, this is part 2 of the web scraping tutorials, and in this one we're going to cover setting values and clicking things. Again, I'm not a programmer, and I might state things not necessarily exactly accurate. However, most of my code should work for you, and it should, I think, help people who aren't familiar with this stuff get started. In my previous video, I mentioned where you can find this tool. This IB2 learner tool. Sorry, it's early. And if you click here and you go to helpful links, you can find the link here for this one. This will bring it to you. These are other useful links to get started. And so first thing we're going to do, obviously first thing we need to do is to get a pointer, right? And I covered this in the first video. This is going to be a pointer of the web browser. So Jethro put out on our post that it doesn't really matter what this is as long as you're consistent with it. So if I was to say, like, put up a message box with, now here I wanted to type pwb dot, I wanted to type that, but that's not going to work. Why is that? Because now our pointer is stored in WB instead of PWB. So if I do this, save it, reload it, so here's the URL, right? If I had put in the P, this would not have worked, right? Because this is looking for PWB instead of WB. And so just a good point to remember that, like, it really doesn't matter what this is, as long as you're consistent throughout your scripts. So in all my code, you'll notice when you use the GUI writer, and let's say we were gonna what's the retrieve current URL, so it's the same code. It always puts in PWB. I think of it as pointer to a web browser, but it really doesn't matter what it is. It just needs to be consistent across them. Okay, so first we need to get the pointer of the web browser. And you know what? I need to keep this PWB so everything else works. I don't have to tweak it. And then let's start setting values. So let's say we wanted to put in my email address. So I use this tool here, and this gives me, off the top of my head, I can see 3 different ways. There's name, ID, and AP underscore email is the ID, or the input field, the tag names, is 12. So let's start off with the input tag being 12. Alright? So now I'm going to set value, set on page, and I'm going to say set using a tag name, and that is because these brackets here is telling me it's an array, right? So I'm going to change this tag name to input, and set it to 12. Ooh, 12, and do the old hello world, which makes no sense for this, but that's okay. I'm going to save it, reload it, and bam, there it goes. So an interesting or important point here is to note this other, so there's this other input field, right? And that's input 15. And I mentioned in my first video here. Let's save this, reload it. Now it puts it in there. But what happens, like, if this 15, what happens if they, for some reason, get rid of this or insert one in between? Well, this one no longer becomes, it's no longer 15. It's either 16 or 14 if they delete. And that's why these tag names, they're very convenient because it allows you to do a lot of stuff if they're not named. But using the names, even if you put stuff in between, these names should not theoretically change, right? They might, but they more than likely they don't. And I've done this for a bit, and that definitely is the case. Alright, so let's go ahead and work through using the other, the name and ID. So we already know, so we know the name, set on page, and it's going to be a unique name, and so we can just take this, put it in here, and we'll change it to X's. Oh, I'm on password. Duh. I meant it so we can see it. Let's say email. Okay. And then the ID. Oh, you know what? Let me I didn't demonstrate the other one, but the principle is the same. I'm going to say set on page, set ID with dashes. So there is a, and I did, if this was, let's say, instead of this, let's say it was this. This one you cannot put into this version. Set on page. You could not put into here because, if I remember, I think this is a legal character, and it wouldn't be able to run. AutoHotkey wouldn't allow it to run. So when if there was a dash in it, you use for the same get ID, right? I'm going to put this in here. Now, of course, this one it actually does work, but I didn't demonstrate in the video, and sometimes it's just easier to make sure that you give the actual example and the why, right? That's the whole point of the videos. But you can put them in there. Alright, so that's for setting things off of the name, the ID. We're setting the value. Let's change these radio buttons. So that one is create. And I'm going to set. Yeah, I guess I should have called them radio boxes, but check boxes, same thing. And here, actually, so this has a way to say it's checked and not checked. For now, let's get rid of this one. Let me zoom out a little here. Here we go. That's better. And this is create. So now it's going to say set it to being checked. Save it, reload it. Oh, I didn't like that. Yeah, actually, I was looking at that. It looks a little odd. Let me see. See, I kind of think that is the way that works. Nope. Oh, I have the get element by tag name. Why did I do that? Alright, let's try this again. Oh, that is, I'm sorry. Alright, it is early. Set checkboxes by tag name, so input 13. There it goes. Okay. So what was happening there? Let me show you here. Let me bring up one so I can have it as my example. Because this, I could put this in here, right? And I can borrow from here and say, you know what? I'm a terrible typist, so I'm going to borrow this part. Get rid of the double dots. Comment that out. Let's change this back. Now when I reload this and run it, of course it doesn't work. Oh, where'd my checked go? That was weird. No, it's there. I am losing my mind. Anyway, yeah, we'll just forget that ever happened, apparently. What I did want to show you also, though, is alright, this is running, and then I'm going to assume that's always a bad guess, so 13 and 14. So I'm going to duplicate this row, and I'm going to put this as 14. Put a sleep of 1 second in between here. I'm going to loop this. I always can't remember if it's, I think it's these brackets. And another sleep, which apparently I need more of. Oh, and that's going to loop indefinitely, but who cares? Now when I run this, see it's doing this loop, right? It's making this one checked and then this one, and so it's going back and forth and back and forth. I didn't put a counter on it, so it's not going to stop. But this is just to demonstrate. Yes, it's getting both of these and working through them. So that'll take care of that. Let me stop. Let me get rid of these. Next one, which I don't think we have on this one, is a dropdown. So let's go to our forum page. Move this guy out of the way first. There we go. And here is a drop down. Select one. So click. Sorry, click. I don't want to click on set. Set drop down array. This is also giving us, which I will demonstrate in this one. So let's first do the index number. It's a little easier to figure out, right? And it's select one. Of course, I can't scroll that any higher because the page isn't longer, which of course means I'll move this up. Okay. Now, with any luck, let's set this at the post submit. And when I come back to the script here and save and reload it and launch, so it set it to the very first, because they're zero based, the first item in this list. Let's go ahead and change this to 3. Reload it, run, and see it changes it to the fourth. 0, 1, 2, 0, 1, 2, 3. You don't count on 0. It's 0 index. 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah, man, more coffee. So that's how you do it off the index. But what if you actually knew the word? Let's go back to the IB Learner tool. So in here, name, ID, ST, value. Oh, there's a value 0. Interesting. On some of these, though, so see it here, it says value A, right? And under the post subject. Oh, that's what's, sorry. So here we go. It's a better example. So T for post time, F for forum. So let's go ahead and change the select one to F. I'm going to comment this one out now. We borrow that guy. Put in a 1 here. And now I'm going to change this to F. So unlike an input box, right, it's gonna look up F on the form, and the form is going to replace F, and then you're going to see forum. So let me save, reload, run, and notice it changes drop down to forum. So sometimes, especially if you have a lot, it's convenient to put in, not try to count out the numbers and look where it is. Put in the letter. Sometimes you can you put in the whole word, depending how they define this. Right, this form was set up to just use a letter. Sometimes I put in words there. Just depends on. That's the other thing I realized. Web scraping is much more complicated than a lot of other things with COM, using like Excel and Word and Outlook, because the people who built Excel did it very consistently. Well, all right, maybe it's an overstatement, but they use things in the same way, and once you figure something out, it's the same way. You can keep doing it in Excel. On web pages, man, everybody builds and defines their HTML on their web page very differently, and it gets to be very interesting to try to figure out how to do stuff, because there's just so many different ways you can do things, and on the web page stuff, it's much more difficult to learn how to do it. Okie dokie. Alright, so now we've done the radio boxes, check boxes, we've done the drop downs, and now let's start clicking things, okay? So back in here, you know what, and let's do an example here just as a refresher. So let me get rid of these guys, and we're gonna go ahead and we're gonna set on the unique IDs. I remember the set email equals, I'll put in one of my dummy email addresses, and you know what, I'm going to duplicate that line, and if I remember right, this is password value. It doesn't matter, I don't have a fake Yahoo account, but what we wanted to do is we want to click this button, right? So we're going to drag this down here. And notice the name isn't defined. This is what I was mentioning earlier. These aren't always defined. And the better websites define them all. It makes it much easier. But they're not always there. So this is the ID. I know I can just click in here and it copies it to the clipboard, but I can't help myself to double click select it. Let's go back into here. All right, now we're going to go to click link. Oh man, I have a tag. Okay, well, all right. Well, let's change this to. Well, you know what? Since this one is defined, I'm going to save that one. We'll use that as an example. Since I already have this other one, I can. Oh, and there we go. So see that dash in there? So you know what? This will be a good example. I'm going to save it and I'm going to try to run it. And notice line 8. There's an error, right? It won't allow me to do that because this thing has a dash in it. Because I do want it to be, if I was building this for the long term, not just for this video, and it has an ID, right? I would borrow from my scripts. I'm going to come up here and say set by ID with dashes. And notice the only difference here. Let me do this before I keep talking here. All right. And notice, so this one had click and then the parens because it's a function. And I am going to get rid of this guy. Oop. Now, I still used the ID, and this is just the get element by ID. By the way, these are case sensitive, so make sure you get those the correct case. And I've used the ID, and now it's going to click after it puts in my username and password. Sometimes you might want to put a slight delay in there, but it doesn't. Usually you don't need it. It sure doesn't hurt, though. I'm going to reload it, and now when I click the button, it's going to put in that email address, the same thing for the password, and it's going to click this button. So let's give it a whirl. Oh, and notice, so it clicked it, but it said, hey, there's a problem with this combination. Okay, yeah, that's absolutely true. Let's say I wanted to go to my account, right? So here, obviously, it's not even though it's an A tag, right? I think we could say click A1 for the tag. Oop. Let's see your account. I don't know if I gotta save it. There we go. And click. Oh, so it went to my account. Interesting. I don't know how it did because I didn't think I was logged in. But it didn't log me in. It's just looking at that. All right. So we're gonna go back. Of course, it's expired. Perfect. Okay. The other thing I wanted to mention was sometimes, especially buttons I'll run into, that you have this, it looks like everything you did should work, it's not working. One thing I would recommend you try is this fire event. We'll let someone who actually knows what they're talking about explain why it's needed, but it is sometimes needed. And here, we're going to borrow this one. And we're going to put this right where that one is, and just get rid of this. So sometimes if you're doing everything you think, you're clicking the button, doesn't work, add this thing after it. And sometimes I think that's a JavaScript thing, that it's actually looking for a change, and then it'll take action. And then I have one other example, so let's go in here, and this one we're going to click, and let's say you wanted to, I have two. Okay, so click text on page. So this is a function that I wrote and adopted and borrowed and changed, but we're going to say, let's say I wanted to, this is a get password help. Right, let me see if I can copy that nicely. So the nice thing about this is you can just tell it, look for the words get password help somewhere on the page I'm on, and then run it, and it clicked that for me. So if you have a text that has a lot of page and the things are moving around, right? Let me go back to here. Of course not. So let's say that this wasn't consistently defined as this A6 tag, which is very possible that things get renumbered and renamed and updated. And these numbers, this A6 changes, right? It's nice because you can say, look for this text, right, and click it wherever the first instance. I have a different one that's a little more sophisticated, and it'll look for, you can tell it what number to click, but this one I use at least somewhat frequently. The other one is it's really, really rare, but that comes in handy. The other one I wanted to point out, which it's very rare, but I did build it into my menu builder, is let's say you have A15. Let's go ahead and get rid of this stuff. Need my pointer function. And we're going to focus, right? So let's change this to input 15 and focus. And what this is going to do is it's going to leave your well, let's click up here. It's going to leave your cursor. See how it's blinking up here? Let's save this, reload it. Now here, again, I'm going to be clicking here. Now watch what happens when I run my script. Ready, go. So it drops you into here. Every once in a while, I'll run into a web page that doesn't allow you to populate the form via AutoHotkey or column or whatever. It's rare, but sometimes you need to be able to place your cursor in here, and then you can actually, let me see if I can do this on the fly. Not spend. I guess I'm thinking I'm my wife. Send key, send, hello. Let's see if this will work. There. So it just sent, I guess I should have used, what was this, 13? 12. Let's change this to 12. Now watch when I rerun it. There. Now it sent it in there, right? So it put the focus there, and then I just used AutoHotkey to say, now basically send the characters HELLO. It put it into there, and then I could have gone back in now and said, click this, right? This is, let's see, that's what that was, where I run into that fire event often. When you populate the form using COM and the other examples I was doing earlier, where you set the text in here, I think what happens is JavaScript doesn't realize that you've added text, because it just suddenly, I'm not a programmer, it suddenly showed up, right? But nobody typed in here. Well, when you type in here, my guess is JavaScript sometimes have people looking for someone to enter something, and you can't click this button. So that fire event often will help. It basically, it's my interpretation of like, hey, you know what? You needed to have actually made a change, and then it'll on event changing, it'll then fire. Anyway, I do run into that. I think that was all I wanted to cover this. Yeah, 23 minutes. That's too long. But thank you. That covers the setting and clicking of things. Ciao.